is yours.
Hi, good morning. Today is February 21st, 2019. We'll start our work session. If we can start by standing for the pledge. Tim, you want to lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And Diane.
All right. We just have one item on the agenda today, so it's executive session policy. So we'll have Kazakevich come up and.
Oh, this will be a 20-minute.
You're so funny.
Well, this is a resumption from the prior discussion, and one of the things that I thought of was to see if we would consider looking at our town board meeting rules. And I have handouts. If the press wants one, I can also provide them. The highlighted
You'll need about 10.
portion, the highlighted portion is pretty much the section that's being proposed for revision, although the section above that, there were some slight revisions too, because the time of the meetings have changed. They were 2 and 7, so I noted them as 2 and 6. Also that, I also made reference to the fact that there's a second board meeting in May, which is generally held on the third Wednesday in order for the assessors to.
Tax assessors, right.
Tax cert day, that's correct, so, or grievance day, I'm sorry, not tax cert day. So,
I thought that we were going to just change the board meetings till 6 during the winter months for now, and then we were going to, Jim, you had some concerns about having them at 6 in the summer possibly, because the
Well, I just
days
think
are
in the
longer.
summer, because the sun's out so late that people really don't start winding down their evening until later than 6, but.
Yeah, I agree with that, like if you're on the beach and you're coming off and you wanna get here at 7, when the sun's going down at like 6:37, then I think, that's all, I just think that should be something.
well, that first sentence I could change and just say that as, as set forth in the organizational meeting, or as set forth by town board resolution, the town board shall meet on the first and third Tuesdays of each month.
I think that's cleaner.
Yep.
You know,
Much cleaner.
so, you can make that change, that's fairly simple.
Good,
I probably shouldn't have crossed off the whole thing, but I.
Right, so it should
I'll
be,
re-
yeah,
I'll
yeah.
remember it. I'll
So it's just
remember
for the
it.
reorg meeting.
Yeah, so, or at the end of December, whichever one you do, because I mean,
Yeah, we usually put
sometimes we set the meetings for the following year at the last meeting in December.
Or even the first meeting
Yeah.
of December.
Yeah.
So,
Because we need to start
so
scheduling way
it's just
ahead of time.
as set forth by resolution, or as
Right.
established by resolution. Okay, that's fine, that's easy enough, that's an
Okay.
easy fix. So, that's it. Basically what I did was I took the majority of the matters that are set forth presently in section 105 of the Public Officers Law, which is the Open Meetings Law, and laid them out as being considered matters that when this board moves into executive session will be or shall be considered confidential privileged. The first 3, I'm gonna be honest, I can't really even recall examples
either.
where we've actually used them.
Kind of a good
But
thing.
just to repeat it, the first is matters which would imperil public safety if disclosed. The second item is any matter which may disclose the identity of a law enforcement agent or informer. And the third is information related to current or future investigation or prosecution of a criminal offense, which would imperil effective law enforcement if disclosed. Again, I can't ever think of an example where the town board has actually gone into executive session to discuss any one of those items, but I guess it could have occurred, but I can't think of an example.
I could think of a few, but I wasn't on the board, but I can imagine the discussions that were had.
Okay,
Well, I won't say it now because,
Yeah.
but I'll tell you.
okay, so,
1980s.
okay. Okay, all right, I got a feeling I might know where that's going. Items 4, 5, and 6, are, the ones that I think we are most typical to go into work session on. The first one, proposed pending our current litigation. I would suggest that this is really something that, even if it wasn't stated that it's confidential privilege, you would wanna kinda keep under the hat and not disclose, because we're either discussing strategy or or it may actually entail attorney-client privilege, but attorney-client privilege is covered by Public Officers Law, Section 108, which says that if there is an attorney-client discussion, that it's a privileged communication and therefore exempt under open meetings law. So that type of discussion really, you know,
And I think that
goes
should-
beyond 105. It's 108, and that's a clear instance where any discussion would be not only contrary to the law, which is the CPLR, but I'm not sure why a client would wanna breach attorney-client privilege anyway.
Well-
Once you do that, now it
Yeah,
can be used in a court action.
Okay, so, for example, when we were getting, opinions from outside counsel as to what we could and could not do during the EPCAL qualified and eligible process, all of us, I think, have said, our outside attorney said this. So you're saying that we would no longer be able to do that?
Well, see, that's where this gets a little slippery, but no, because you're not revealing the actual attorney-client discussion. You're just saying your attorney. I would say it'd be as a practice.
Well, I think that that was something that, Jim, you might agree with me because you were here during those negotiations. We really relied on information that was given to us by outside counsel. And when people would say, you should do this, we would say, our outside counsel is telling us that we have to do this, or that we should do this. So I just want clarification under
Well,
that
I think the answer
section.
is this is something that was discussed in attorney-client discussion, and we should break and go into executive session. That's the way it should be handled.
I
My
think-
my favorite thing is, listen, that was discussed, I have no comment on that.
That's the other alternative.
I have no comment on
and-
it.
But that wasn't
I
my
think
fault.
what we did also, when I first came on, there were some questions about it, so what we did have was, Frank Geisler come to the meeting and discuss it at a meeting. Anything that was going to be discussed in the process, because that was one of the discussions, and it was right after I think, at the January meeting, then we had Frank Geisler come to one of the open meetings to discuss some stuff.
So if somebody asks us a direct question about why we're taking the actions that we're taking, we should not say, because our outside counsel has told us we should invite outside
If-
counsel in, or,
If it's an attorney-client discussion, you're relying upon an attorney-client advice, then the answer is yes. You don't have a duty to disclose why you're doing something if it's premised upon an attorney-client privileged communication. Just like in a court action, when discovery is being done, litigation counsel is gonna set up a separate folder that they're gonna ask a judge to look at in camera and say, these are documents, emails, communications that are protected by the attorney-client privilege, and therefore we're not turning them over to the defense, or we're not turning them over to the prosecution.
It's difficult because you have people come to the podium and they'll say something, and going back to like Jody said with EPCAL, they'll say, well, why don't you do this? And we already know why we didn't do it, but we really can't say why we didn't do it. And it gives the look that maybe we're holding back something from the public, but the public needs to be educated also in terms of what is executive session, what is confidential, knowledge that we may have that we can't necessarily share with them at that particular point in time. So as we're learning today about what we can and can't do, the public also needs to be educated on this. And I think it might be something that we might wanna, whether it's a conversation at work session here or whatever, just to give them a better idea that, yes, we know what you're saying, but we can't say that. I don't know how easy you can convey that to the public. But it's difficult on us to sit up there.
Excuse me for one
Yes.
second. There's a lot of feedback.
Yeah, a lot of feedback.
I wonder if we could have a link on the website or something,
Well, I
with
think.
some sort of
I-
explanation.
I think it goes back sometimes to the way the town board meetings go. The town board is there to make public comment, not to excorporate or question you under cross-examination. And I think sometimes that's where
You mean the
process-
public,
the public,
Right.
yeah.
right,
I mean, they're there to say why they think something shouldn't be done, or
yeah.
Right.
why they
Express
feel,
their
why they feel
opinion.
you shouldn't vote on a particular project, or why you shouldn't move forward. That's what public comment is. It's not cross-examination.
Better.
Good point,
Right.
good point.
And I think that's sometimes where, and
Oh, that's
by all
why
means, I can jump in and say that, you
That's why I
know,
say public
if
hearings.
if I have that free reign, we can do that.
There's a reason they call it a public hearing,
Right,
because you wanna hear,
correct.
We do wanna hear.
not banter.
So, I mean, I think that's part of the problem, maybe.
Our
That-
answer as a board is generally through our vote.
Right.
But we do also have the opportunity to not go back at, but answer or describe what we're
Clarify.
thinking, clarify what we could feel on a particular item, such as last night with the food waste facility. I
Correct.
mean, it was, you know, there was give and take with that. It's not, we're just not sitting, and that wasn't a public hearing.
No, but that was,
But if it
that's,
But that's
was-
different, cause that
public
is,
discussion,
that's
that's
public
different.
discussion and it's
Yeah.
not a legal opinion.
yeah,
You know, so is it,
I don't think
I
a
think the
discussion
difference is when it becomes
wrong.
legal opinion.
Right,
But
So-
we have to all be on the same page on this, cause I mean, if one person's saying, well, I can't give out that information, and then another person's giving out that information, you know, that's where the public gets confused and thinks, like Tim said, that someone's, you know, trying to hold back or hide something. So it's good that we're having this discussion now, so that we're all on the same page on this.
So, when it comes to proposed litigation, if the board decides in executive session that they are not going to pursue that litigation, shouldn't that be a formal vote?
Not an executive session.
No, I'm
because-
talking about in a resolution on the dais.
But if there's no if there's no pending, if no litigation has been commenced, then how would you?
No, if you're talking about a proposed litigation and
okay,
the board
we're going a little
decides,
beyond what we were, you know, the four scopes of what I was
No.
thinking of here, but, I hear
There
what
are
you're
some
saying.
things that are private,
You know, I
they're
think
not
that,
public discussions, period.
well,
I don't
that
think every
the
matter
public
has to be
should
put to a
know.
vote, I guess, if that's the question.
Yeah, I think that the public should know. I think that, you know, we've said that everything that we discuss in executive session eventually comes to a vote, and not all of it does, and I think that it should.
Oh, I don't agree
I'm
with
not
that.
sure how that would work. So if you're discussing whether something is a proposed litigation and it doesn't come about, I mean, somebody can still have an opinion on something, but it's just, doesn't become something that happens in executive where you're discussing it back and forth. If any council member has an opinion on something, they can certainly express their opinion on something, but their opinion and information they're using for their opinion cannot be used from something that happens between the attorney and the board in executive session. Is that correct, Bob, or?
I think that's, and I was thinking about this point, this is somewhat of a slippery slope, because let's just go to item 5, for an example. You're talking about the appointment of somebody, and you have 4 candidates, and one board member likes this one board member doesn't like that one, this one likes candidate B, this one likes candidate D, this one likes candidate C. What does that mean after you have that discussion? Does that mean you can't talk to any of the candidates? I would say no, because you're not actually using information you learned in the executive session. But if you say, I don't like candidate B because he's or she has done X, Y, and Z, then I would think that would be a violation. So I think it's drilling down to maybe a little bit of minutia
Right.
and technical, but I mean, you're town board members. Part of your job is to then go back, maybe if you have a discussion about an appointment of an individual, and try to, you know, get consensus from the other parties. Well, I think you're wrong because.
But
Or,
that discussion, if
so
that
that wouldn't be an
discuss,
executive session violation in my mind.
You mean with each other,
Correct.
with each other, but not with outside.
Well, I mean, are you saying that if you have a particular candidate who you would like to, that it would be wrong for you to then still speak to that candidate and say, I think you still should maybe push your,
Well,
go-
that's not
and
disclosing-
and
that's
go-
not
and go-
disclosing
Go
anything.
talk to the town board members and
But
tell them
that's
why they
not-
should be hired.
That's not disclosing anything from executive session. If
Correct,
you're, if you're
that's-
going to
and
a
that's my
particular
point.
person, but if you're disclosing what happened in an executive session or discussing any of the other candidates with the person you're going to speak to, that's an issue. But if you're just going to somebody and saying, you know what, there's a job opening, I think you'd be good for the job, I know that, the board is considering doing something, you may want to do, take some sort of action, and that conversation is very limited to a position.
That's great.
Not to the not to what happens in exec.
Or what
So I
happened
think
last
it's-
week at
it's-
work session where
Well, that's kind of
there
where,
was-
that's kind of where I am, because I see this could become a weapon or something, and I'm hoping that's not what happens. I'm hoping that, again, the ground
I
rules.
think it's just
and
bad practice, and I think
threw
it's
this
poor
out because-
policy.
Wait, Jim, you've never spoken to any prospective candidates when you didn't sit in on the interviews to get more information about them?
I've never gone to candidates that weren't in the running to get them to undermine the process, never,
Well,
never.
I can tell you that
I
during
can
one
tell you.
hire,
You asked
at
me a
least
question.
one person on this board has gone to an outside advisor that does not work for the town, but is very well-versed in the water districts and has discussed candidates with this person, and that was not me. So I'm saying that we're doing our due diligence,
I've
trying
sat
to
on-
get the
I've-
best candidate.
I've sat on personnel for quite a few years, and I've seen a lot, I've interviewed a lot of people for jobs. And and you always rank them, 1, 2, 3, or whatever. And then you discuss it with the board in executive session. These are the 3 candidates, these are the 3 top ones, and the board normally decides which one to go. I'm not married to any particular one of them. This might be some I like better than others for personal reasons. But professionally, any 3 of them could probably do the job. So I'm not gonna say, hey, C, you better get in there and start talking to the board members, and because it looks like you might not get the job. That's just wrong. That's just wrong.
That's not right.
Well,
I agree with that.
I agree
You're
with
pitting
that,
employees
Tim.
against elected
Right.
officials, it's wrong.
And Jim and I
Or
have been
potential
doing
employees.
personnel, and I feel like it works well. We interview the clients, and then the people, and then we sit and have discussions, and we usually come to consensus before
Oh,
the next
I
interview.
agree, you should reach out and try to give a leg up to somebody you really like, but that's a personal thing between you and them. Not going, tell them,
no,
And you
saying,
disclose that.
Right.
saying that we're getting ready to make a decision. If you want this job, you should let the board members know that you're seriously interested in taking this job. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think that as far as the interview process is concerned, that we should have double interviews. If there's so that everybody could sit down and talk to the candidates, not just a couple of board members talk to the candidates, because,
that's why we have a personnel committee.
Which is
well,
a lot of work.
Yeah.
Well, then sit on the
put in a
personnel
lot-
committee, if you wanna
we put in a
challenge
lot of
everybody's
hours.
decision, then you sit on the
no,
personnel committee.
I don't challenge everybody's decision, just a couple of them, that's all. So I would like opportunities to meet with those people on an individual basis and
Can
discuss
you
with
imagine,
them.
instead of going for a job interview with a town, you gotta sit with each board
Right.
member
We
to
did
tell
it
you
for,
something?
we did it for the senior building inspector, where I sat with each individual person that was applying
Well,
for that job,
that's
because
an
I was
anomaly,
very.
that's not common.
And
But
that's a change in our hiring practice. It's not really anything to do
I
with
can't
executive
imagine.
session.
It's just ridiculous,
Well, then, maybe we should just have a personnel committee, and it shouldn't be board members, so that one person gets to know a
Well,
candidate that's
it's
coming
2
for
board
office rather
members,
than.
it's whatever department is
another.
hiring, it's Meg, and it's the chief of staff or whoever. I mean, it's not just 2 board members,
No,
Well-
it's usually 5, 6 people.
and if it's not
Right,
me,
Bob?
well, I'm not even on anymore, but if
Personnel.
Karen can't make it, I may sit in, if Tim can't make it, I may sit in, I mean,
Department head
Well, I'm saying there are,
Department head 5.
I know from past experiences that there are,
Yeah.
I know from past experiences that there are candidates that you have preferenced, or that I have preferenced, or Tim has preferenced, because you know them, because they've lived in the
right,
town
but they
forever, and,
necessarily get the job.
well, sometimes they do and sometimes they don't.
Right.
So what I'm saying is that if we're going to have a personnel committee, it shouldn't just be 2 board members that are making up that personnel committee. I think we should set up a personnel committee between the town attorney and the personnel director and maybe the department head, and
They
leave
are all
elected
on it.
officials out.
They are-
Leave elected officials out. And let those 3
Well-
people report to the town board
It's
as
helpful
to
having elected officials.
who to
there.
hire.
It's functioning very well, I don't know why we would mess with it.
Right, well, it's only been done for a couple hundred years, but I think that, basically.
Really, Jim? It's been done for a couple hundred years
Well-
with board members sitting in on interviews?
Well, has
I
it
know
not?
other towns that don't do it, but,
Well, I'm talking about, I only know Riverhead,
okay, well,
I've
I'm
known
just
Riverhead
saying
since
that,
for almost 60 years, that's the
I'm
only
just
thing in
saying we
town I
might
really
wanna
know.
change the practice, because board
Because
members
why?
might be biased towards one
It
candidate
still
or
comes down
another.
to a 5 vote, it still comes down to the board to appoint.
Right, but the recommendation is coming from somebody who's not biased, which are 3 people that are not.
Most
on the board.
recommendations, you can say what you want, but most recommendations, believe it for me, and I'll stand on my merit, and I'll stand, praise holy God, that I'm telling the truth. When I do interviews, most of my weight is based on the department head, who's gonna be hiring that person, that has to work for them. Unless there's something that I know glaringly about this particular candidate that they don't know, whether it's something in my police force life or something, that I can tell them aside from that person. Normally I go with what the department head wants, really.
Okay, well, we'll
The
discuss
department,
that.
I'm gonna
We'll
chime
discuss
in,
that later,
I'm gonna
about a
chime
couple
in
hires
here.
that have happened in the past where we
The
haven't done
department
that.
head carries a lot of weight
But
in the interview,
well, there's a
let me
couple
just finish.
appointments, but-
The department head does carry a lot of weight in our group things,
They
because they
should.
know
They're
the
gonna be the
workings
one
of their
working with this
department.
person for
They
the
know
next
what the job
umpteen years.
entails, they're going to be working with this person.
I agree, I think the department head should be
Exactly.
sitting on it, I'm just
So,
questioning as to whether or not board
Um,
members should be sitting in on it.
I think board
Yes,
members
because
should,
you
because
certainly don't want
Board
the
members
department
should
heads
be sitting
handpicking
on
their,
it.
right, you don't want them doing that.
ultimately, the board members are gonna be technically the boss of this employee.
It's working very well.
Right.
It works well, so why would we change things?
And
So
thank
Ken,
God
did
there's a
you-
civil
are
service
we-
protection, there's
Bob,
civil
are we-
service
did
and
we
there's
get through all of your
lists.
stuff, or?
The only one we didn't touch was collective bargaining negotiations, which, again, I almost think it's something that doesn't need to be mentioned, because I think if you're involved in collective bargaining negotiations, it wouldn't make a lot of sense to leak it to the other side what you're considering, but, that's just, my layman's
I think
observation.
we're with you on that.
That's happened too, unfortunately, that's, I think,
yeah.
I got
It would seem-
snagged for
it
that,
would-
but
it would seem to
mine was
impair,
totally,
it would seem to impair what you're doing,
Yeah.
but that's just my.
So last week at work session, Bob, in your opinion, last
Yes,
week at
sir.
work session, discussing the employment or promotion of the employee should have never happened in a public session or been discussed with the press, correct?
I think that what happened was unfortunate, and,
But we're all, I mean, we're all,
and it probably,
in some sense.
should have, when it, as soon as the topic hit the floor, maybe someone should have raised their hand and said, stop, let's go into
Yeah.
executive session,
I agree,
but it didn't happen that way.
no,
I can't turn
no,
back
and we
the hands of
discussed an
time.
employee,
And
and
it's unfortunate, because
it is
really
unfortunate, because,
was a bad situation, especially for the particular employee.
yes, and it created a lot of havoc, and it created a lot of other employees feeling that they have to cross all their Ts and dot all their Is and document their daily lives here at town hall, but it is unfortunate. But, like I said, we're all guilty of doing it in one way or another, so I'm glad I think this clarification is good.
The other question I have for you on this, Bob, there are a couple more items that you didn't include, and I'm just kind of curious why you chose not to put them in there, because there was the two other items, I know the one is the exam and stuff like that, while we don't do it,
Yeah.
it
I
tends to be
didn't
in the
really see how it even applied at all.
I didn't know if you just wanted to add that, just to stay consistent with the, public, what is it, the public authorities law?
It's public officer
Yeah,
law.
public officers law, just so we stay consistent with it. And then the other one was the
It's-
proposed
This is up to you guys.
Okay.
I put this
What
together.
was it, Laura?
It was,
This
I
is-
threw it out to you
These-
guys
yeah, say that
to
again.
change, modify.
and I
If-
just,
If you wanna recite examples under each, I mean,
Bob, I
you know,
just wanna, I'm just stating the other thing. The other question was the proposed acquisition, sale, lease of real property, or the proposed acquisition of securities or sale or exchange of securities held by such public bodies, but only when publicity would substantially affect the value thereof. I think that one should be included in there too, because under the public authorities law, you have all of these that Bob has listed. There are two additional ones that seem to be consistent in every one. I know that you guys had gotten the open meetings law, just from Lamb and Bernowski, for the executive session, what is it to be included in executive session? So we have all the way up to F, but we're not including G and H. And in all the documents I see, they include G and H, so just for consistency, I think we should have them.
What are D and H?
Yeah,
Where are you?
we don't know what you're referring to.
So
No,
Bob is doing these based on Public Officers Law, Article 7, right? So he was referring to
Section 105.
Section 105.
Right?
Right.
Right, so this is the conduct of executive sessions. And so, as a conduct of executive session, they say what you can go into executive for, which is A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right? So A is matters which will imperil the public safety and disclosed, we have that. Matters which may disclose the identity of law enforcement, that's the second one. So he's listed all of them except for the last two, which is the preparation, grading, and administration of exams. Well, I know it's something that we do not do here, to stay consistent with the public authorities law. I think that these last two items, because the next one is the proposed acquisition, sale, or lease of real property of the proposed, what I just read. So I think for consistency, we should include all of those that are included in the public, public officers law, section, 105. I'm just not sure what your reasoning is for excluding them, so if you wanna address it, it's fine.
I couldn't, in my wildest imagination, see how G was even applicable to what you guys do. I don't see you preparing, grading, or administrating any exams. That's all done that's all done by the, you know, civil service, so.
I agree with you on
I just
that.
didn't see why it had any place in this, it just made no sense. It seemed to be just out of place and inapplicable.
But then the following, the proposed acquisition, sale, or lease of real property, I think is applicable. And I'm just kinda curious why you wouldn't wanna include that.
Well, that's attorney-client privilege, because that's what we discuss in executive session under attorney-client privilege, any sale or lease
Well,
of
that's
property.
108 section, that's different.
Again, if this board collectively wants to add, and I didn't have a real strong feeling one way or another with regard to H.
I'm just kind of, you know, the reason I mean, this is something that may pertain to us at some point, so to exclude that, I
Well-
think is kind of, you know, maybe not the best practice, if we're using the other things as per the public authorities law.
I think that if we're discussing the sale of public property, which is not owned by these 5 members on the board, it's owned by the public, it should be discussed in public. Because it's an asset of the taxpayers, and it shouldn't be discussed in executive session unless it has to do with a contract negotiation.
And that's exactly what this says, but only when publicity would substantially affect the value thereof. So if you're talking about a parcel of land, say the town wanted to acquire, and somebody else was looking to bid on the same parcel of land, we wouldn't wanna discuss publicly what we were going to offer that necessarily, or whatever we were going to do, and that may disclose our hand and then cost the taxpayers more.
But
So that
that's-
would be something that would be discussed in executive.
But that would be a contract negotiation, such as the sale before us today with the EPCAL property, where it was discussed in executive session that it was 40 million, and then we voted on it, and the deal went through, and then somebody shows up at a public meeting the next time and offers 45 million. So I get
Right.
what you're saying, but all of those discussions
Well, that's
on
only
the
because,
price
right, that was
and
my run.
everything is attorney-client privilege.
Right.
And everything
Well,
has
you
always
may be
been
discussing,
labeled.
you may have, let's just say with EPCAL, you might have discussed it with Cushman Wakefield, and so that's not attorney-client
No.
privilege.
Cushman Wakefield was asked to leave the room, but Cushman Wakefield brought us offers.
I wasn't there, Jody, I'm just saying, you're saying it's attorney-client privilege, and I'm saying it may not always be the attorney discussing this with you, it may be your financial administrator, and it's not your attorney there. So I'm just not understanding why we would exclude this.
She's saying.
I'm not opposed to not excluding it. You know, like I said, the last thing we wanna do is if we're looking to acquire property or to get rid of property, excess property, that we would tip our hand in any event. to the
Well, I
public at
disagree with
point.
that,
I mean,
because-
eventually you will, of course, but you don't wanna let a potential person that owns a building that the town might be interested in your property.
I
You don't
disagree
wanna
with
tip your
that.
hand right away because you're gonna say, oh, the town's
And
buying it.
certainly we wanna do
Oh, I'm gonna
as
charge
much
3
as-
times as much because, you know, the town's got deep pockets.
You know what, we own the animal shelter property. So, I
Yeah.
wouldn't wanna see all discussions about transferring that property happen in executive session, and the people that all came last night aren't aware until a resolution is actually put forth to vote to sell the property for a dollar amount.
But that wouldn't be under this. That wouldn't be under that.
Nothing to do with that.
This
We
wouldn't
were
be under
never-
that, that would be,
We were
that
never
wouldn't,
selling
it
that
wouldn't,
property
it wouldn't
anyway.
affect the value of it. That's not a discussion that would have to be an executive, because you're not discussing something that's going to affect the value of that.
You can discuss in public the possibility that you may wanna sell it, but you're not gonna discuss the financial disclosures
Right.
or the parts of the contract in
I
public.
agree with that.
That would be an executive
That whole animal
session.
shelter on Young's Avenue, that was a
that would be
private partner,
including
that
this.
was more of a,
Yeah, but we're talking about the property itself.
we were
the
never,
sale
it
of
was
the
never for
property.
sale.
We could decide, I mean,
I don't see why
look
we
at-
just don't add, I mean, if it's part of
It's there.
public welfare,
That's-
sale
yes.
105.
Yes, that's,
Just include
okay.
it verbatim, and it is what it is,
Alright.
because we
Yeah.
would still be in violation of it whether we include it here or not, so
Right.
it's,
We violate all these.
right.
Okay, is that everything,
Okay.
Bob? Is that all of it?
Unless there's
Alright, anyone
further
else have
questions?
questions?
Who
That's
said-
the only
who's-
change.
Who's running the meeting here? Is that you asking that?
So-
Yes.
and
I'm the deputy.
on,
Deputy Dog.
and under debate, on the second page, in the back, item number C, where it says, "No member shall speak more than once on any questions until every member choosing to speak shall have spoken." I agree with that, but it says not, nor more than twice in any case without leave of the board. Can you explain that? Because if there's debate back and forth between myself and Tim, and then myself and Catherine, that this, I think, needs to be clarified, that it should be a continuing discussion until all, the questions are answered and.
Yeah, this is, I mean, the rest of this goes back to 2013, when we were trying to assemble some rules for the
Yep.
board. We didn't have rules prior to that.
And the reason why this came
formalized.
about was because of the debate on the dais.
It was the ridiculous behavior, yeah.
The leave of the board means you can allow the discussion to continue,
Yes, that's what I would like
Right.
to say in here.
right? Is that correct? with
Well,
the
I mean,
leave
that's
of
what it means, but I mean, I guess, I'm not sure if I understand the question, cause I mean, I think this sentence kinda speaks for itself. It's basically limiting.
It says
yeah, every
nor
board
more
member
than
to-
twice in any case.
Right, without leave of the board. So that means it can be more than twice, but you need leave of the board in order to speak more than twice.
Well, I disagree with that.
You've stated your case
How
twice.
many more times, you have to keep reiterating the same
You're not gonna
points.
get me to
You know
confess
what?
to a crime I
talk to
didn't
my wife all the
commit
time
by
about that. You already
continuing
told
the
me once.
Okay, well
Conversation,
then the rule needs to be held to that by all members on the board, where you only get 2 opportunities to speak on any matter. And Bob, you need to be
Okay,
the
but
juror
us.
of that. So,
I think we're all elected officials. I think, goes back to what we said before the meeting. We need to be able to work together for the community. And I think that, we just need to self-monitor ourselves so that we are able to get our point across and get the town business done.
so we shouldn't say the same thing twice during any debate, is what you're saying?
The whole idea.
Cause that'll be
Yes, I mean,
fun.
believe me, I don't wanna, my wife does this all the time. I said, you already told me. You don't have to tell me again in a different way. You already told me.
No, don't
So-
get in trouble when you get
I'm
home
just saying,
today.
but it is, I know you,
I know,
so-
she's not
so-
watching.
some people get very passionate about how they feel about a certain thing.
Yes.
And they think if they say it a different way, or they raise their
times.
voice, or they, whatever, it doesn't make it any more or less credible. You may just case and let somebody else make their case, and then you decide. You don't have to keep beating the drum.
For the most part, when it's been discussed at a work session, or when it's been discussed in executive session, but sometimes resolutions are pulled off the floor, and the debate needs to continue to get your points across further.
Well, this allows that to happen,
Yeah, I don't think
in the
anybody's been,
case that it should.
I don't think anybody's been stifled or told to,
No.
don't continue the
Well,
conversation.
although some
I don't
should.
think that.
Maybe should've.
I agree, there's a
But-
couple times that I would have said enough too, but,
But I don't think that we have, I don't think
think we
anybody's
violate
been called twice and you can't talk again
But
if you have something else to say.
I'm glad that I was reminded about this, because I'm gonna say, you already spoke twice. You have to leave now.
exactly, enough. Stop
leave.
saying it, you're saying the same thing over and over
Take
again.
leave, please.
I think it's a matter of respect.
In fact, I'm gonna put a
And
little star next to this one,
professionalism.
and
Think
keep
we
it
can-
right on the dais.
I think we can be respectful and professional.
Well, that's
Anything else?
debatable, let's debate that.
That'll be our job for
Gotta
this
be
year to
something
work
we
on
can
this.
ruin your day with today. We
Oh,
did a
we'll do
good
that
job of
later.
it yesterday.
We'll do that later.
Well-
We'll do that later.
And then on debatable motions, where it says, a motion may be withdrawn by its proposer at any time before a vote is taken. It should be by a proposer or by a second, which is what happened last night, where the supervisor she seconded it and then wanted to withdraw her second. So it says by a proposer.
Proposer can be a first or second, correct?
Then
Where
it should
are
say
we?
which may be a first or a second. On the second page on the bottom, under
Yeah,
debatable motions.
yeah, it has to be
Uh-huh.
it has to be proposer that withdraws it, not somebody else.
Well, it's kind of hard here because
Why do
the,
that?
Is the proposer
I-
the first
first
and the
one,
second,
that's
or
what I
is it
thought.
just the first
the
to
first
make an
one.
No,
motion?
whoever offers the motion.
Yes.
That's what I'm thinking,
Okay.
whoever
Well,
offers the motion
has
is
the ability
proposer,
always to
but-
take that motion back. All right, you know what?
So
I
just
think-
leave it as the proposer then?
So a second can't withdraw the second.
Well, the
Well,
board
that's not
can,
what,
the
that's
board,
not what this is saying. I mean, the
Right.
main motion is actually the motion that's on the floor,
That's right.
as opposed to the question of whether I'm withdrawing a second.
So then if
On
it's
a motion.
seconded, does it have to automatically go to a vote, or can then the proposer who moved it take
Well,
it back?
You need a motion in a second
Cause
to
that
even
was the
have it.
question last night, so I'm saying,
Well, see, I can't even answer. You said, you talked twice already. Leave.
You said it twice, you're done.
When you have a motion,
Mm-hmm.
you need a second on a motion to even have a discussion.
yes,
About the motion.
that's in here.
So
Which one
then,
are we
after that discussion, the
Bottom of
proposer
the
can say,
page.
you know what, after this discussion, I withdraw the motion, or I withdraw the proposal. Then there is no second, because there's nothing to be seconded. So I never heard of me withdrawing a second, that's.
Me either, so that's why I
Well,
just wanted
but
clarification.
Well, I did
it
a
was
quick-
Catherine and myself, and neither one of us were gonna withdraw it, so that's why I turned it over to you, so you could withdraw it.
Withdraw the second.
Yeah, but that's,
Withdraw the motion.
Yeah, but only the proposer can withdraw their own motion.
But I thought first and second could be the proposer.
and Catherine wasn't doing it, so it was already seconded, so that's what I'm trying to get at here.
Well, it all worked out. It
Yes,
was-
yeah, there we go, so
Yeah,
we
but-
could,
but
Bob,
I
if you
don't
could
want
research that a little
But
and
I
just
don't
get
want
back
it
to
to
us on
happen
that.
I
again.
think that's getting into a different issue, and that is the
I just
question.
want, wait, I just
That
wanna
is
say,
the question
that
of
was a
what-
first for all that seconding stuff.
Yeah, I think that's a question
Well,
of what follows on the main
I
motion.
have a whole, I was gonna make a big
Well, on a
speech
main,
today, but
on
I have
a,
whole
on a
issue
main
with the
motion
whole
for
thing.
first and second, it can be withdrawn or tabled after discussion.
I don't
That's the
carry
point of the
second on it.
discussion,
And
correct?
I think that that's where things got a little right.
Stuff like that.
Right.
Even though there was a motion and a second, you could have had a discussion, and then there could have been a further motion to table. And for some reason, I think there was a sense that we couldn't table because it was already moved and seconded.
But
And I
if you,
think that's incorrect.
but it shouldn't have been tabled, it had to be withdrawn.
I think you can make a motion to table. I
Well,
think
that's
that's a
why- I just
secondary
want
motion. I
clarification
think that's
on
a
that.
secondary motion on a main motion.
But Bob, then you can't
But
withdraw a
if we're gonna get
motion.
into all these parliamentary
By the
rules, I
way-
guess I better really start reading
Please.
Robert's rules at all.
Please,
I'm gonna give you
because-
easy copy.
But
There you
Bob,
go.
how would you withdraw a motion?
I'm not saying you withdraw, I'm saying the main motion is to move the resolution.
Mm-hmm.
It's moved and seconded.
Discussion.
Then there's a discussion on it.
Now,
Then, as part of that discussion, when that discussion,
The proposer
Stops.
can either
it could be a further motion to withdraw
remain the
or a
motion.
motion to table.
Withdraw or table.
I believe.
right, so yes, and that's what we did, we withdrew it.
So
I
it's
think we
done
tabled that.
after the
No, we
motion
withdrew it.
is made and seconded.
Right, that's when you
That's
discuss
when
it.
it opens for
It was
discussion
withdrawn.
prior
It was
to the
withdrawn.
vote.
Okay,
Yeah, it was withdrawn,
it
Yes.
was withdrawn, okay.
I would just like clarification on that, because what happened
I'll-
last night
I'll
was
give you Robert's
embarrassing,
rules,
and
you
I
can
don't
read
want
them.
that to happen
You can
again.
read them, because they're lengthy.
Yeah, you could summarize it for us and just
Oh.
say when a motion is
I
made
can
and then
give
it's
you- I can give you the
seconded.
cheat sheet.
But I
What
just
do they
don't want
call
it,
that, when you crib notes?
like I said, it was embarrassing, and we had a lot of people in the audience, and I think that we should be better versed on what to do when it comes to a motion and a second, and whether or not, who calls discussion, if, or any of us can call discussion after it's first and seconded, and.
No, I call discussion when it's before I
So
call for
if
the vote.
if Catherine proposes it and you second it and you don't want discussion, then we don't have an opportunity to discuss it unless you say it's okay?
Well, I mean, this is running a meeting as, you know, as a supervisor, I don't do that. I never have called a vote with, if somebody wanted to discuss something, I've never said there's no discussion, I'm bringing right to a vote.
Well, it hasn't
I
happened
would-
yet, but
no,
there's a
and
possibility it could.
Well, that would not happen under me.
No, yeah, and it absolutely can't, Robert rules, I mean, after a motion is made, or a resolution is made and is seconded, that's the time for discussion, but a lot of times before you make the second, like, when I was seconding it, I would say, if you read it and I was seconding it, I would say, second discussion. So then I would open up so then, I second the motion.
I call for discussion, and then I would call for discussion, and,
Sometimes you might do that for a clarification, sometimes you might do that for, interpretation or something that you're not picking up in the resolution that you want clarification on.
Right.
But it's pretty cut and dry.
So,
And the
But we don't
proposer could,
follow
after
Robert's
the discussion, the proposer who read the resolution could say, after the discussion, I make a motion that we table this. And you can do that all in this, you don't have to withdraw and all that, you can do what you want at that point.
well,
Right.
this is an education for me, because,
I
I mean, what happened last night, I've never experienced in my 10 years here.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. But we'll talk about that some other time. Executive session, we'll talk about that.
I'm not even sure, well, so the end line is, do you,
can you withdraw, when you have a motion, that you first and seconded, after discussion, what are the options? You can table, you can move to vote, or you can withdraw.
That's correct.
and then
That's
the
the
question I have to
clarification.
ask is, are you saying that these are the rules that you're limited by, and that if there's a subject matter that's not discussed in here, that you're stuck with these? I guess, you know, I'm not sure
I think we
how
should
far
just
we're gonna go
adopt
afield on this,
Robert's
but-
rules.
Well,
I mean, most towns
That's the other
use it.
alternative, I mean, you could just
I think we should just go
throw
back to
these
Robert's
aside,
rules.
but then you got all these technical Robert's rules too, so.
Well, that's why, Bob, I had asked you when you sent the email on Sunday, and thank you for doing that. I know that you were going to the Association of Towns, and I know that you spent some time on this
Yeah.
over the weekend to get
Robert's
it ready
rules
for today.
is voluminous, so I mean, I can give you the link, cause they are lengthy.
Yeah, but I would just like to know how what we're looking at
I'll
here
give you-
varies.
There are cheat sheets that give you like an outline form, things that you can do. I
So-
think that, I'll give you that,
so
that's
by
easy, that's
looking-
5 or 6 pages.
So by looking in here, is there anything in here that is different from what Robert Rules suggests we
Well,
follow?
Robert's rules are lengthy, so they get into every, well, not into every, but they get into more detail on variants of things that can happen at a meeting. This is, what, 4 pages, so this obviously does not address a lot of factual circumstances. So the answer is, this doesn't address every circumstance that Robert's rules would address.
Right, so that's why, I mean, this, Jim and I know why this was done, because we were here. I almost think that we should just go back to Robert's rules, and it's like the town law book, and everybody looks at the town law book, and that's what we refer to when it comes to questions that we have, and I think that Robert's rules is something that you can,
Some of Robert's rules, and just oddly enough, our attorney is Robert, but, some of Robert's rules isn't applicable, I don't think, in this type of democratic.
Again,
I,
looked
cause
at
some
them
of
in a
it's,
long time,
some of it's
so I mean-
totalitarian, I mean, I read it years ago, but.
but I think that we could easily go online on Robert's rules and say,
They can, there
you
is
know.
there is a PDF link, and I think there's another link that, you
But
can-
it is lengthy, but
They
you
are
can
lengthy.
search and find what you're looking for in there if you had questions on anything, whereas I think that some of this stuff
I like this just comes down to behavior,
maybe
And respect,
interpretation.
that's all this comes down to.
So,
Are we finished with the discussion, this discussion?
I don't
As I
know,
wanted
I'm
to
gonna,
bring up.
Oh, you've been.
compare it to
it's
Robert's
not on the
rules, and
agenda.
Bob, I'd like you to
Yeah.
do the same, and tell me, like, maybe you can identify which sections of Robert's rules are applicable to the things that are outlined in this.
Do I have to take it?
Then I can read Robert's rules and
Noticed.
see how it differs from this.
So Bob, for this, you will add,
I'll
that
add
one
H.
other thing, and then
Yep.
circulate that around,
Yes.
and then, we'll put that forward for,
And I'll make the change at the top too,
okay, thank you.
alright.
I just wanted to mention last night, with the whole waste to energy plant, that I feel like somehow it wasn't communicated well, that the word didn't go out correctly to the community, that this was something we were still looking at with a critical eye. And it alarmed people. I'm glad that people came out and spoke spoke their mind, cause we do like to hear from the community. But, I did feel badly that so many people who, you know, live in that area of Youngs Avenue were so upset. I think it was just the way the word went out, and the way the work session went, and then, I feel like we could have communicated better with them as to the way things transpired, so.
It was less than a week.
Moving forward, I think, you know, we just need to be more careful about that. And
Well, I don't
I'm-
think it was any
I
board
just-
member.
No, I'm just saying overall, just the way it happened, I think.
I think you better talk to the reporter.
Somehow, no, I think somehow the way it came out in the work session, you know, there was a lot of talk about a grant that was due March 7th, and I just think somehow the word got out wrong, and people were under the, idea that, people thought we were voting on it last night, and it scared people, and I just think next time we'll be more careful about communicating with everybody, that's all.
I
I'll just
guess.
say, I'm glad I wasn't at last week's work session, that I was home
Yeah, so
ill.
are we.
Part of the problem is the public doesn't understand what a work session is. They think that what we say here is golden, and that's the way it is. Now, perfect example, the food to waste,
Right.
situation. We talked about it, but there's still a lot more legwork to go into
Right.
our part
Right.
as board members to research, find out more information from the company, call other companies around, there's a lot of due diligence to be done. And if I say, yeah, I'd like to move forward with this, it doesn't mean that I'm voting, yes, I want this. It means that I wanna look at it further. But unfortunately, I think it got misconstrued a little bit through the press, that this was a urgency.
Deadline that we were pushing.
And it is an urgency for them, it's not an
But it's
urgency
not
for
for
us.
us.
Right, no, I-
That's their problem.
I just
He met with
include as
us
we
in
said.
November, and now all of a sudden he's here a couple weeks before, that's on them,
Just
that's
include right now.
not
Well,
gonna
and
make
but-
me work any faster for this.
But I can kinda understand why people thought that, cause the date of March 7th was mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
and then, you know, a lot of people at the table were saying like some positive things about it, so
Right.
somehow the public got the idea that we were gonna quickly move forward with it, and that's unfortunate, but Tim and I were talking, and on a positive note, it did bring out, you know, a lot of people to town board that we don't usually see, who got to meet each other,
And then
we
they
got
saw
to
one of the
meet
worst
them.
meetings, they'll probably never come back.
No, I got a lot of text messages last night.
I mean,
that
they must be shaking their
they're
heads
gonna
like,
come
what the
to
hell are we
more.
at?
So, anyway, I
That's
just
better than
wanted-
watching TV at home.
When you start bringing in buckets of popcorn, then you know it's very bad.
Well, I could wait, if I could just say one other thing, you're absolutely right on all counts, and I think that the resolution for the RFP for the solar didn't help.
I think that did make it
They're like, oh my
confusing.
God. But the second thing is, as I know
Yeah,
it's not
that's right.
noticed, but I sat with Open Space yesterday, and they would like to, and I'm sure that they have the purview to do that, but they would like the responsibility of updating the 12DA list that we had years ago, because Danowski's Fish Market was on at one time, and that's went
That'd be
to tax
great.
sale. Broad Cove, that's off the table, so the list is very old, so we wanna look at properties to
think that
prioritizing
was a
it.
good
So I
idea.
think that's a
Good,
project they're gonna
and-
start working on.
Very good.
And that's such a great committee.
That's
a
great.
Yeah.
And
great
the
group.
list, the list was actually put together, I'm told, before the master plan update.
Oh, it's old.
So the master plan already made a lot of changes where those properties were in threat of
So-
being developed. The new zoning code basically restricted down to nothing. So where they
And
were
you know
top
what,
priority then, the master plan fixed that.
And actually, some of this 12DA money can actually, may be able to use, we're talking about public spaces, may be able to use
But downtown.
for downtown, to grab a couple of the buildings that we're talking about.
Good.
So, and that we're
So
looking
just
at
to
that.
finish
So that-
up, I hope
I look forward to that.
So I hope those people will, I apologize for the way that went out, and,
It was
you
all
learn.
Catherine's fault, just like.
oh, stop, it was not all my fault.
All right, I just have one other thing, I wanna add, thank you, Bob. I'm gonna call Jeff Murphy up, I think, Karen might have given you this is just something I received. It's from the US Department of Interior, I just wanted to brief the board on it quickly.
Yeah, I didn't see that.
It was,
So you're amending the work session agenda to include that?
yes,
What are we including?
Jeff Murphy.
yes,
But what is it?
well, that's what Jeff is here to present.
Good morning.
It's,
Good
it's a
morning,
letter, it's a
Good morning,
letter that I
everyone.
received that's going out for you
We actually
guys.
got two letters.
Okay.
One to your office and one to my office
Okay.
concurrently. Has to do with the FEMA rate maps.
The
And
FEMA what?
FEMA rate maps.
Rate?
Rate, R-A-T.
Oh, rate,
Yeah, has to do with flood insurance.
okay.
They're making changes to the flood insurance rate maps.
Right.
They started this last December. There's supposed to be a public informational meeting in January. But
Okay.
because they're a federal government, guess what happened?
Yeah, shut down and all that.
They got shut down, so they canceled it. So there's an online presentation, since we just got the letter yesterday, I have not viewed it. I sent out, copies of the letters to Bob Kozakevich, Don Thomas, Drew, Brad, everybody who may have an interest in this.
I will.
There are two properties in the town that these
Effects?
changes would affect. East Creek, the marina, our marina, and our other beach at, Iron Point.
Which one?
I'm sorry.
Iron Pier.
Iron Pier, thank you. With these designations and changes, if we were proposed, and I'm gonna hand this out to you in a moment, if these go into effect, if we propose any sort of improvements to them, we would not be entitled to any public or federal funds as a result of these changes. They're trying to reduce federal expenditures nationwide on certain areas. Those two beaches were targeted.
Thank you, Superstorm Sandy.
So.
Well, thank God we did
But-
only improvements to East Creek that we
well,
had to.
but we still have, you know, we still have our boat launch there, we have our docks there, we have our beach, we have our dredging.
We know.
So I'm just trying to find out if that would impede us doing any of that or applying for grants for any of that. And if it would, I think that we should, you know, voice our concerns about what it is that this would encompass.
Well, it sounds like from what Jeff just said, it would impede our ability to apply for grants on those two properties, so.
Thank
Well,
God we-
my question is, I'll let you, but from what I'm reading, it seems like if it's development, and I guess the
Correct.
question is, what is the definition of development? So if it already exists there, and you're asking for money to replace something, is that non-development or considered development?
Don't know, again, we just got this yesterday.
Yeah.
We have not had a chance to meet to review it, have not looked at the online presentation. You're raising some good questions, so,
This also affects private property along East Creek. So are we going to put this up on the website so that the people that live within these
Well, that's
FEMA
what-
zones are notified that the laws are getting ready to change and their insurance rates might go up significantly, or is it addressing insurance rates also? I thought I heard you mention.
Again, we just got it yesterday, haven't had a chance to dive into it, there's a whole website on it.
Yeah, it says
I-
flood insurance rate maps
And
for
the
your
maps that-
communities.
The maps that you see attached, actually, that came from the link that they provided to us, so you
Yeah.
have to do some due diligence in terms
Yeah,
of
we should,
navigating your way through it.
I would like to see a list of what tax map numbers are subject to this new code, and I would like to see that up on the website so that people could access it if they live along East Creek or in any of those areas, so that they know that they should be on this, public hearing as well. Because if their flood insurance rates are gonna go from, you know, $5,000 a year to $10,000 a year, those residents on this map should
They need
know
to know.
that.
So, Jeff, are they doing any informational sessions that the public can go to about what
No.
this is? Are they doing?
No.
No, so,
The only thing that they're doing, they were gonna have one on, back in January, but then they got canceled with the federal government shutdown. So in lieu of having the public meeting, there's a recorded presentation, and I have a link, that's in the February 4th letter addressed to me. Haven't had a chance to look at it yet. As I said, I sent this to Dawn and to Bob and to Drew.
so how would you like to tackle this?
We'll come back next week with more information.
Yeah,
Okay,
but
and when do the comments need to be in by, do you know?
They don't say, they just say, the presentation will be available in mid-February. They don't have a deadline, I'm sorry. The public comment period will end on April 17th.
Okay, so can we just come up with a plan before, to address this before, so we can let the public know
Yep.
whether we have to do a public,
Yep.
meeting to explain where we're at, what may affect them?
Yeah, cause
and
it's all the
then-
homes that are on the west side of East Creek, and it looks like it captures a few of the homes on the east side of East Creek, or Town Road going to Town Beach in Jamesport.
So Jeff, how do you have any ideas how you wanna tackle this with you've reached
We
out to
get-
who?
I'm gonna talk to the other, department
Departments?
heads and then, report back to you and the board, what our findings are, and then
Okay.
from that, we can develop a strategy of how to wanna proceed.
Okay, so you think you can report back for the next Thursday meeting?
I would hope so,
Okay,
that's the game plan.
thank you, appreciate that. I know we
Sure.
called you last minute on this,
Sure.
but I know that it's time sensitive,
Yep.
so I just wanted to at least get it out
Sure.
there so that people can start to know about it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks
And
for
if
bringing
anybody
this out.
watching has questions, if you wanna get a copy of this information, just contact my office in the building department.
Yeah, I think it should probably go up on the website.
I'll make sure it gets a color copy gets posted. I gave you a black and white, but I'll make sure a color copy gets posted.
Yes.
Okay, we have the hot topics on the website now, so we can put it on
Okay.
hot topics.
Will do.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Can I have a first and second to go into executive session for matters surrounding additional certification of an employee, matters leading to potential appointment of an individual to the Riverhead Water District, matters leading to the potential appointment of individuals to the Riverhead Police Department, current litigation in the matter of Oak Hills Association versus Woodson.
So moved!
Can I get a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.